I never thought the people who once called me daughter would look me in the eyes and say my newborn baby wasn't their responsibility. My name is Emily. 2 years ago I stood in a sunlit garden, marrying the man I believed was my forever. Jake came from a family that seemed picture perfect. Old money, big house on the hill, Sunday brunches that smelled of fresh croissants and quiet judgment. His mother Diane smiled tightly when she hugged me. His father, Richard, shook my hand a little too firmly. But Grandpa, Jake's grandfather, Harold, was different. He had kind eyes that crinkled when he laughed, and he whispered to me on our wedding day, "You're the best thing that ever happened to this family, little one." We had our daughter, Lily, on a rainy Tuesday morning. Jake cried when he held her. He promised me the world. 3 months later, he was gone. A car accident on the highway. Just like that, my whole life shattered. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and empty words. Afterward, Diane and Richard sat me down in their marble living room. I was still leaking milk, exhausted, broken. Diane spoke first, voice cold as winter steel. "Emily, we've decided it's best if you and the baby make your own way. Jake is gone. Lily? Well, she isn't really our responsibility anymore." I stared at them, heart hammering. "She's your granddaughter." Richard looked away. "Blood doesn't always mean obligation, dear. We have our own lives, our own plans. You're young. You'll figure it out." They offered me one check, barely enough for 2 months. Rent, and told me to leave their property by the end of the week. I walked out carrying Lily in her car seat, tears streaming down my face, wondering how people could be so cruel. I moved back into our tiny apartment, sold what I could, and started taking every shift I could find just to keep formula in the house. But the worst pain wasn't the rejection. It was watching Lily's tiny face, so much like her father's, and knowing the people who should love her had thrown her away. I thought that was the lowest point, until the day Grandpa called me from the hospital. Lily got sick at 6 months old, a high fever that wouldn't break. I rushed her to the emergency room, terrified. I had no one to call. My own parents were gone, and Jake's family had made their position crystal clear. I was sitting in the pediatric ward, rocking my crying baby, when Grandpa Harold appeared at the door. He looked frail, leaning on a cane, but his eyes still held that old warmth. He had been admitted himself the day before, heart complications. He said, but he had heard through a nurse that we were there. He sat beside me for hours. We didn't talk much at first. He just held Lily's little hand while the monitors beeped. Then he started speaking, voice low and trembling. "Emily, there are things you don't know. Things I should have told you before Jake passed." My stomach twisted. "Grandpa, you don't have to." "I do," he said firmly. "Because they're trying to throw you both away, and I won't let that happen." He reached into his coat and pulled out an old envelope, yellowed with age. Inside were documents, adoption papers, a DNA test from years ago, and a will. "Jake wasn't Diane and Richard's biological son," he said quietly. "He was mine. Their marriage was falling apart. Diane had an affair. When she got pregnant by another man, they came to me. I agreed to raise Jake as my grandson to keep the family together. But legally, he was always my son. And that means Lily is my blood, my true heir." I couldn't breathe. The room spun. Grandpa continued, voice growing stronger. "I built the family fortune. The company, the properties, the trusts. Most of it was always meant to skip a generation. I updated my will 2 years ago, right after you and Jake got married. Everything goes to Lily when she turns 25. There's a trust for her care right now, more than enough to raise her. Educate her, give her the life she deserves. Diane and Richard have been living off my money for decades, pretending it's theirs." Tears fell down my cheeks. "They knew? They suspected," he said bitterly. "But they never wanted to face it. When Jake died, they saw their chance to cut you out and keep control of the money. They even tried to pressure me to change the will while I was weak. I refused. Lily's fever finally broke that night. As I held her sleeping against my chest, Grandpa made me promise something. "Don't say anything yet. Let them think they've won. I'm going to make sure the truth comes out in the right way." The next few days were a storm of emotions. Grief for Jake mixed with rage at Diane and Richard. How dare they look at my innocent baby and call her a burden? How dare they discard us like we were nothing? But underneath the anger, something else was growing. Quiet, cold determination. For the first time since Jake died, I didn't feel powerless. 2 weeks later, Grandpa called a family meeting at the hospital. He asked Diane and Richard to come say goodbye because his health was failing. They arrived dressed in expensive clothes, already discussing what they would do with the estate. I was there too, holding Lily. Grandpa waited until they were seated. Then, in a voice stronger than I had heard in months, he told them everything. The adoption, the DNA, the will, the trust that already had Lily's name on it. Diane's face went ghost white. Richard started sputtering. "This is ridiculous, you can't—" "I already did," Grandpa said calmly. "The lawyers have been notified. The accounts are frozen until Lily's trust is properly established. You two have 30 days to vacate the family home. It was never yours to begin with." The silence that followed was deafening. Diane turned to me, eyes desperate. "Emily, we're family. We can work this out. For Lily's sake." I looked at her, the woman who had thrown my baby away, and felt nothing but calm. "You had your chance to be family," I said softly. "Now Lily has a grandfather who loves her, and she has me. That's more than enough." Grandpa passed away peacefully 3 days later. In his final moments, he held Lily's hand and smiled at me. "Take care of our girl," he whispered. I did, I still do. Today Lily is 2 years old. She laughs in the backyard of the house Grandpa left us, a modest, warm home far away from that cold mansion. The trust takes care of her future. I finished my degree and started a small business. We're healing day by day. Diane and Richard? They lost everything they thought they had. Last I heard, they were living in a small condo, fighting with each other. The family friends who once worshipped them slowly disappeared when the truth spread. I don't wish them harm, but I do hope they remember, every single day, the little girl they tried to throw away, the girl who ended up with everything. If there's one thing I've learned through all this pain, it's this: blood is not always what makes a family. Love is. And sometimes the people who hurt you the most end up handing you the keys to your freedom without even realizing it. Never let anyone convince you that your child is a burden. You are stronger than their cruelty. And the truth always finds its way. Thank you for being here with me. If you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you, know that you're not alone. Drop a comment below. Your story might give someone else the strength to keep going. Until next time, take care of your heart.